pray with me? Gracious and loving God, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be the conduit for your message today. My guide, my strength, and my Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so today we heard about Jesus having a picnic with the disciples. You know, last week, if you remember, those of you who were listening last week, if you remember, Jesus appeared in the upper room and joined the disciples for dinner. Now, after the crucifixion and after the miracle of resurrection, the disciples retreated to that upper room. They were devastated. They didn't know what to do. They must have felt that they couldn't continue. After all, they had followed Jesus for years. It had been exciting. They heard Jesus talk to crowds. And they probably did a little preaching themselves. And they had a vision of what the world, especially the world that they lived in, could be. And now, without their leader, without Jesus, what would they do? What could they do? Now it appears that they went back to doing what they were doing before. They'd left their homes and their families and their jobs to follow Jesus. Now they seem to have returned to their lives. It had been a good run, but the mission had failed. They couldn't possibly continue that mission. So they went back home. I mean, they had responsibilities after all. They'd been fishermen. And now they were fishermen again. Has this happened to you? Has something similar happened to you? Have you just jumped on the bandwagon, dropped everything else and followed and followed? You know, maybe you joined the military. And after your time in service, you returned home and tried to pick up right where you had left off. Maybe you joined a movement. You know, for those of you who remember the 60s, there are a few of you here, you may have marched with Father Grappi for against discrimination in Milwaukee. If you're a bit younger, you may have stepped up to the AIDS crisis in the 80s. You may have worked for a political candidate. You may have gone off to college and then returned home and and tried to redevelop your relationships with people who hadn't done that. And when you return, things are just not the same. They're just not the same. But you probably worked to make it work. You really tried. You know, maybe you spent a lot of time thinking about the way things were while you were out working for change. You know, what was happening here at home? You may have missed what was happening at home while you were out there working. But now, you miss what was happening there. But you still need to step back and go and take up your responsibilities, right? This is where the disciples were. And then, Jesus stopped by. He stopped by to share a meal and to share with them a vision. The vision was, all you disciples, you can do it now. It's your job now. It's your mission now. continue. Because the disciples had been trained. They had the skills. All they needed was the will to continue. They could be the vision of Christ to those around them. You know what, my friends? We can be the same thing. We can do the same thing. Times change. We know that. Our leaders change. We know that. But the mission doesn't change. The mission is, you ready? You want to take notes, it's okay. The mission is to bring Christ's love to those around us. I guess the mission is first to accept Christ's love, but then to bring it to those around us. The vision is to be the face of Christ to those around us. Maybe what we need to do is be like the disciples. Maybe we need to have a little fish grill on the beach. You know? Sit down and have a meal together and talk about what needs to be done. That's the easy part. That's the easy part. The hard part is to take those beliefs, those ideas about what needs to be done, and turn them into actions. You know, today, we will have a meal. This church likes that. And I was in the back earlier, and it smells really good. We're going to have a meal together. And our Pride Fest leaders are going to say to us, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Because with Pride Fest, our job has changed a little bit over the last 10 or 15 years. The AIDS crisis is past. That doesn't mean that AIDS is gone or HIV problems are gone, but the crisis is past. It looks like we might have the right throughout the country to get married. So that campaign has kind of passed. We do have the right to be married in Wisconsin. Gay and lesbian people are better accepted in the world today. It's not perfect, but it's better. And yet, the mission of acceptance, that mission is not gone. It's not done. You know, bisexual and transgender folk are still on the edges. They're on the edges of our community. Martin Luther King died 50 years ago. But the problem of race discrimination still exists. Women have the vote. I know that surprises some of you, but women have the vote, but still fight to be accepted in leadership positions. A notable exception being MCC. Children are living in the streets. People in jail are in jail for minor crimes, and when they return to the community, they can't find jobs, so their only resort, sometimes, is to return to crime, or at least that's what they see. We fight with our neighbors because their vision of God is different than our vision of God. Now, if Jesus was still here, I really believe that he could just fix it. He could just fix it for us. But he isn't here in the flesh. And we find ourselves sitting on the beach, cooking our fish, and feeling helpless. Maybe we need to finish our dinner and then decide what to do and ask for help. Jesus isn't here in the flesh. So maybe the help doesn't come directly from Jesus. Maybe it comes from the people around us. Maybe We each need to get off of our individual beaches and go to work. And go to work. So, after service today, sit down and discuss what we want to do at Pride Fest. How we want to do it. Don't just assume that the committee's going to come up with something wonderful and you can say to your friends, oh yeah, we have a booth at Pride Fest. Of course, I didn't do anything with it. I didn't help with it, and I'm not going to go help staff the booth, and I'm not going to march in the parade because I'm not a parade person. But we have. Volunteer. Volunteer to make it happen. Because down on the Pride Fest grounds, we may be, you may be, the only vision of Christ that those people see. Yes, there are other churches there. But as you're talking to somebody, you may be the only vision of Christ that people see. How are we going to reflect that vision? Let Christ work for you. Amen?
Amen.
Please join